Eli was 37 years old, made a steady $58,000 a year, maintaining the complex HVAC systems that kept the Atlantis Casino in Reno from becoming a sweltering metal box, and he was beginning to suspect his 8-year marriage was a carefully constructed lie. The feeling wasn't a sudden crash, but a slow, creeping dampness, like condensation forming on a refrigerant line in a humid mechanical room. It was a coldness he could feel in his own home, a place that was supposed to be his sanctuary. He stood on the casino's roof at 3:15 p.m. on a Saturday, the Nevada sun beating down on the vast expanse of white thermoplastic polyolefin roofing. Below him, the city of Reno shimmered in the heat, a collection of glass towers and sprawling suburbs nestled in the high desert valley. The air smelled of hot tar and the faint, sweet scent of exhaust from the industrial-grade chillers he was servicing. His hands, calloused and capable, moved with practiced efficiency, checking the pressure gauges on a 500-ton train unit. These machines were his domain. They were complicated but honest. If there was a problem, they told you. A high head pressure, a low suction line temperature, a tripped breaker. They didn't pretend everything was fine while quietly failing. He respected that. He wished people were as easy to read. His wife, Sade, had become a puzzle of contradicting signals. She would smile at him over a dinner he'd cooked in their modest 200-square-foot condo in the old Southwest District, but her eyes would be distant, looking past him as if he were just another part of the furniture. She accepted the flowers he brought home every Friday, a simple $15 bouquet from the grocery store, but would place them in a vase without comment, her touch on the petals almost dismissive. Eli earned his $58,000 with sweat and skill. It wasn't a fortune, especially not compared to the world Sade's family inhabited in their sprawling South Reno villas, but it was honest money. It paid the mortgage on the condo he'd bought for $180,000 before they were even married. It kept his 2014 Ford F-150 with 120,000 miles on the odometer running smoothly. It funded his small LLC, Elijah's Mechanical, which he used for side jobs, his collection of professional-grade tools, worth at least $15,000, were the primary assets of the business. It was a good life, a solid life. He believed in building things, in fixing what was broken, but lately he'd felt the gnawing dread that the foundation of his own home was cracked beyond repair, and he had no idea how to fix it. He didn't know it yet, but in less than an hour, the problem would finally give him a clear and devastating diagnostic reading. Have you ever felt that slow, sinking feeling that something is deeply wrong in your own home, but you just can't put your finger on it? It's a terrible kind of quiet, and we'd love to hear if you've ever navigated that kind of uncertainty. Let us know in the comments below. The facade of their domestic life was a masterpiece of routine. On paper, they were a normal, happy couple. Eli would wake at 5:30 a.m., the sky still a bruised purple over the Sierra Nevada mountains. He'd make coffee, a simple drip brew using $8 Maxwell House grounds, and pack his lunch in a well-worn igloo cooler. Sade would sleep until 8, cocooned in the Fed $200 Egyptian cotton sheets her mother, Beverly, had bought them as a housewarming gift 8 years ago. A gift, Eli now realized, that was more a statement than a kindness. He'd kiss her sleeping forehead before he left, her skin warm, her breathing even. He wondered what she dreamed about. He hoped, with a dwindling sort of faith, that sometimes she dreamed of him. Their evenings were a study in quiet contrast. Eli would come home around 4 p.m., the scent of industrial coolant clinging faintly to his Dickies work uniform. He'd strip off the $45 flame-retardant shirt and jeans in the laundry room, shower, and change into a comfortable pair of $30 cargo shorts and a faded University of Nevada t-shirt. Then he would start dinner. He loved to cook. It was another form of building something, of creating comfort from simple ingredients. Tonight it was chicken and sausage gumbo, a recipe his own mama, now 5 years gone, had taught him. The holy trinity of onions, bell peppers, and celery sizzled in a cast-iron pot that had been his grandmother's. The total cost of the meal was maybe $25. Sade would arrive home around 6:30 p.m. from her job as a marketing coordinator for a downtown law firm, a position that paid $65,000 a year, and which her mother had secured for her through a connection. She would walk in, a vision of corporate polish. Her deep brown skin was luminous, her hair perfectly styled in a silk press that cost $150 every 6 weeks. She'd drop her $2,400 Louis Vuitton handbag on the kitchen island and sigh. Long day, she'd say, every day. She'd pour herself a glass of the $40 Sauvignon Blanc her mother insisted they keep stocked, while Eli drank a $2 bottle of Coors Light. "Smells good, honey," she'd say, peering into the pot. The praise felt automatic, like a line from a script she'd long since memorized. They'd eat at the small dining table he'd bought for $400 from a local furniture store. He would ask about her day. She would give him vague answers about reports and meetings. He'd tell her about a tricky compressor change-out on the casino roof, about the intricate dance of valves and pressures, and he could see her eyes glaze over. He learned to stop talking about his work. Her world was glass-walled offices and catered lunches. His was roaring machinery and grease-stained knuckles. To her, it seemed, they were worlds that could never truly meet. The dollar-tagged details were everywhere, a constant silent testament to the gulf between them. His watch was an $89 Timex Expedition, reliable and unpretentious. Hers was a $3,500 Movado, a gift from her parents for her 30th birthday. He drove his paid-off truck. She drove a 2022 Lexus ES350, for which the $650 monthly payment was a recurring point of tension. "It's a professional image, Eli," she'd argued when they bought it. "I can't be pulling up to the firm in a 10-year-old Civic." The Civic had been his car, which he sold to help her with the down payment on the Lexus. He never mentioned that. Acts of service were his love language. He was beginning to realize she didn't speak it. After dinner, they'd watch television on the 65-inch Samsung TV he'd bought on a Black Friday sale for $700. She'd scroll through her phone, her thumb flicking across images of a life he couldn't provide. European vacations, designer fashion, friends clinking champagne glasses on yachts. He would watch her face in the flickering light of the screen, a mask of placid longing, and feel a chasm opening between them on their very own sofa. The betrayal hadn't been a single event but a slow, methodical erosion of his spirit, orchestrated by his mother-in-law Beverly, with his wife Sade as a silent, willing accomplice. The outrage had accumulated over years, 1,000 small cuts that he'd tried to ignore, to explain away as misunderstandings. Now, in retrospect, they formed a clear and damning pattern. The first major incident had been a Christmas dinner 3 years ago at Beverly's house in South Reno. It was a 4,000-square-foot monument to beige luxury, with soaring ceilings and a kitchen that looked like a showroom, complete with a $15,000 Sub-Zero refrigerator. Eli had brought his signature dish, slow-smoked brisket. He'd spent 12 hours tending to it on his $800 Traeger grill, meticulously managing the temperature, basting it with his secret mop sauce. He was proud of it. He carried it into the house on a large platter, the rich, smoky aroma filling the air. Beverly, dressed in an elegant $900 St. John knit dress, looked at the brisket on her marble countertop as if it were a dead animal someone had dragged in from the street. "Oh, Eli," she'd said, her voice dripping with condescension. "You brought barbecue?" She turned to her other guests, a collection of doctors and lawyers. "Eli is so wonderfully rustic." Sade had been standing right there. She'd heard the casual cruelty, the dismissive wave of her mother's hand. She saw the flicker of hurt in Eli's eyes. and she said nothing. She just gave a tight little smile and busied herself arranging the $200 floral centerpiece. Her silence was a roar. It told him everything he needed to know. In the war between his dignity and her mother's approval, he would always lose. The attacks on his profession were constant and insidious. Beverly referred to him not as an HVAC technician, but as the air conditioning man, as if he were a day laborer she'd hired. At a family brunch, her brother, a cardiologist named Marcus, had asked Eli what he did. Before Eli could answer, Beverly chimed in. Eli works with his hands. He fixes things at one of the casinos. It's very important work for some people. The table went quiet. Sadie just took a delicate sip of her mimosa, her eyes fixed on her plate. Later in the car, Eli had tried to talk to her about it. Your mom was pretty out of line back there. Sade had sighed, that familiar, weary sound. Oh, Eli, don't be so sensitive. You know how she is. She doesn't mean anything by it. But he knew she did. Beverly meant every single word, and Sade's defense of her mother was, in itself, an indictment of him. The final straw, the one that had prompted him to secretly seek legal advice back in January, was a conversation about their future. They were discussing buying a house, moving out of the condo. Eli had been saving diligently, putting aside $500 a month for the last 4 years, accumulating a down payment fund of $24,000. He'd found a nice 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood for $450,000. The mortgage would be tight, but manageable. When he showed Sadie the listing, she'd looked at it with a pained expression. This is nice, I guess, but it's not South Reno. Sade, we can't afford South Reno. The houses there start at $1 million. My mother says a starter home is a trap, she'd replied, her voice taking on Beverly's authoritative tone. She says we should wait until we can afford to be in the right neighborhood. It's about asset appreciation, Eli. It's about our image. Our image? Or your mother's? He'd asked, the question sharper than he intended. It's the same thing, she'd snapped, and the mask had slipped. For a fleeting moment, he saw the raw ambition and disappointment in her eyes. I don't want to be stuck in some middle-class tract home for the rest of my life. I want what my parents have. Your father is a senior partner at a law firm, Sade? I'm an HVAC tech. We are not them. I know, she'd said, and the words were quiet, but they landed like a punch to the gut. I know. The conversation ended there. The next week, he'd found the website for Anya Sharma, a family law attorney in downtown Reno. He'd paid the $300 consultation fee in cash. He sat in her tidy office with its view of the Truckee River and laid out the facts of his marriage, the pre-owned condo, his LLC, the subtle and not-so-subtle humiliations. He felt foolish, like he was overreacting. Ms. Sharma had listened patiently. Mr. Johnson, she'd said, her voice kind but firm, instinct is a powerful thing. Let's hope you never need me. But if you do, you'll be prepared. He had left her office feeling a strange mixture of dread and relief. He had a plan, just in case. He had no idea how soon he would need to use it. Saturday, 4 p.m. The sun was beginning its slow descent, casting long shadows across the driveway of their condo. Eli was in the garage, a space that was entirely his own. The air smelled of sawdust and WD-40. He was meticulously cleaning and organizing his tools, a ritual he found calming. The metallic click of a socket wrench finding its place in a molded plastic case was a deeply satisfying sound. He had his small Bluetooth speaker playing, a low hum of a local jazz station. It was peaceful. Through the open door that led into the house's laundry room, he could hear Sadie in the living room, talking on the phone with her mother. He paid it no mind. It was their daily ritual, a post-work debriefing session he had long ago learned to tune out. He was polishing a set of crescent wrenches when he heard Beverly's voice, tinny and sharp through Sade's phone, rise in volume. I just don't understand why you're still hesitating, Sade. It's been 8 years. 8 years of this mediocrity. Eli froze, his hand hovering over a wrench. He assumed Sade had her phone on speaker. He took a half step towards the door, his heart starting a low, heavy drum beat against his ribs. "He's a good man, Mom." Sade's voice was faint, placating. It was the same tone she always used when feebly defending him, a defense so weak it was an insult in itself. "Good for what?" Beverly scoffed, and the sound was so clear, so venomous, that Eli realized Sade didn't have her on speaker. She must have forgotten to mute her phone while she did something else, her iPhone lying on the coffee table, broadcasting her mother's poison into the quiet of their home. "Good for fixing your sink? Sade, listen to me. You are 36 years old. You have a law firm job. You're beautiful. You come from a good family. You are wasting your prime years on a bottom-tier provider. He has hit his ceiling. That $58,000 a year isn't going to magically become $200,000. He is what he is." Eli stood motionless in the garage, the wrench cold in his hand. He felt like he was outside his own body, an invisible observer to the dissection of his own life. The jazz music from his speaker suddenly felt mocking. "What am I supposed to do?" Sade asked, her voice a whisper of frustration. "You do what I've been telling you to do for years." Beverly's voice was now a conspiratorial hiss, sharp and clear as if she were standing right next to him. "You start planning your exit. You talk to an attorney, a good one, not some strip mall parasite. I can give you a name. You need to understand the financials. Is his name on your car? Is your name on that little condo? You need to position yourself. Stop letting him think this is a forever plan. You are embarrassing our family, Sade. When people ask what your husband does and you have to say he's a maintenance man, it reflects on all of us." A wave of cold washed over Eli, so intense it felt like he'd been doused in ice water. A maintenance man. The casual, deliberate cruelty of it stole his breath. He was a skilled tradesman, a specialist in a complex field. He held certifications that took years to earn, but in their eyes, he was just the help. He heard a faint rustling sound from the living room. "I have to go, Mom. I think he's home." "Fine. But you think about what I said. Every day you stay is another day you're falling behind. I love you." "Love you too," Sade murmured. The call ended. Silence descended. The only sound was the thumping in Eli's ears. He looked up at the corner of his garage and saw the small black dome of the Ring security camera he'd installed 2 years ago after a string of neighborhood break-ins. The tiny blue light was on. It recorded on motion. He had walked into the garage 5 minutes ago. It had recorded everything, every single, soul-crushing word. A notification on his phone confirmed it. "Motion detected in your garage." He pulled out his phone, his thumb trembling slightly as he opened the app. There it was, a video file, time-stamped at 4:02 p.m. He didn't need to play it. He had heard the live performance. The recording was just the evidence. The honest, undeniable diagnostic reading of a catastrophic failure. The hours after the discovery were a masterclass in strategic restraint. Eli's first instinct was a hot surge of rage. He wanted to storm into the living room, to hold the phone up to Sade's face and watch her perfect composure shatter. He wanted to scream, to demand answers, to let 8 years of swallowed resentments pour out of him in a torrent of furious words. But then he thought of Ms. Anya Sharma's advice from that cold January morning. If the time ever comes, do not confront. Do not give them time to build a narrative. Act with precision. Gather your evidence and let it speak for you. His rage cooled, hardening into something dense and heavy like ice. He would be methodical. He would be calm. He would play dumb. He took a deep, steadying breath, the air still tasting of metal and oil. He put the wrench back in its designated slot, the click echoing in the sudden silence of the garage. He wiped his hands on a rag, walked through the laundry room, and entered the kitchen. Sade was standing at the counter, scrolling through her phone, the very picture of domestic innocence. She was wearing a pair of $120 Lululemon leggings and a soft cashmere sweater that probably cost 3 times that. She looked up as he entered, a bright, practiced smile instantly appearing on her face. "Hey, honey, I didn't hear you come in," she said, her voice smooth as silk. The lie was so effortless, so immediate, that it almost made him laugh. "Just finishing up in the garage," he said, his own voice sounding unnervingly normal. He walked to the sink and washed his hands, scrubbing away the grime. "Gumbo's been simmering for a while. Smells about ready." "Oh, good, I'm starving," she said, placing her phone face down on the granite countertop. She came up behind him and wrapped her arms around his waist, resting her chin on his shoulder. Her touch felt like a violation. Her body, once a source of comfort and intimacy, now felt foreign, the body of a stranger who had been observing him from a distance, judging his every move. He could feel the warmth of her cheek against his back, and all he could think about was her mother's voice. Bottom-tier provider. "You feel tense," she murmured, her fingers gently kneading his shoulders. "Tough day at work?" He had to fight the urge to flinch away from her. He forced himself to relax under her touch. "Just a long day on the roof. The sun really beats you down." He turned, and her smile was right there, inches from his face. It was a beautiful smile. He used to think it was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Now he could see the mechanics of it, the slight pull at the corners of her lips, the way it didn't quite reach her eyes. It was a performance. They ate dinner together at the small table. He served the gumbo over rice, the steam rising between them. She praised the food with her usual polite enthusiasm. "This is amazing, Eli. You're such a good cook." He just nodded, eating his food. He watched her as she talked about her day, about a tedious meeting and a difficult client. Each word was a stone, building a wall between them. He was a silent observer on the other side, watching a woman he didn't know at all. She had no idea that he had a recording of her betrayal saved to the cloud. A digital ghost that would soon haunt her every waking moment. The dramatic irony was thick enough to choke on. She was playing the part of the loving wife, and he was playing the part of the oblivious, devoted husband. It was the last act of their sham marriage, and he was determined to play his part to perfection until the curtain fell. He had made a critical mistake for 8 years. He had underestimated her capacity for deceit. He would not make the mistake of letting her know she had, in turn, completely underestimated his capacity for cold, calculated action. That night, Eli lay in their bed, a king-sized frame they'd bought for $2,000 from Pottery Barn, a concession to Sade's taste. He lay perfectly still, feigning sleep, his breathing deep and even. Beside him, Sade slept soundly, her face peaceful in the pale moonlight filtering through the blinds. He had never felt more alone. The intimacy of the shared bed felt like a mockery. He waited until 1:17 a.m., when he was certain she was in a deep sleep. He slipped out of bed, his feet silent on the hardwood floor, and went into his small home office. He closed the door, the soft click of the latch sounding like a gunshot in the quiet house. He sat down in his worn $150 office chair and opened his laptop, a 5-year-old Dell that was slow to boot up. He put on his headphones, took a deep breath, and pressed play on the Ring video file. Beverly's voice filled his ears, no longer tinny and distant, but crisp and clear, a viper whispering directly into his brain. "Wasting your prime years on a bottom-tier provider? He has hit his ceiling. You are embarrassing our family." He listened to the entire 5-minute conversation 3 times. Each listen peeled back another layer of denial, exposing the raw, rotten core of his marriage. He wasn't just married to Said. He was in a hostile partnership with her and her mother. Said's quiet agreements and non-committal murmurs were not weakness. They were complicity. His grief, which had been a cold knot in his stomach, began to transform. It sharpened into a fine, hard point of clarity. This wasn't just an insult. It was a long-term strategic campaign to undermine him, to position Said for an exit. Beverly wasn't just a meddling mother-in-law. She was an architect of emotional and financial sabotage. And Said was her willing apprentice. He opened a new browser tab and logged into his email. He found the message from Anya Sharma from January, subject line, "Your consultation." He reread her summary of his assets. The condo, purchased pre-marriage, was his sole and separate property under Nevada law. The value had increased from $180,000 to nearly $350,000, and while some of that appreciation could be considered community property, his initial equity was protected. His business, Elijah's Mechanical LLC, and all its assets, the tools, the truck, the business bank account with a balance of $11,250, were also his, established before the wedding vows. Said had her salary, her Lexus, and a 401k with a respectable balance. They had one joint savings account with a meager $4,300 in it. They were not financially entangled in a way that would be difficult to unwind. Beverly's grand plan for Said to position herself was based on a fundamental misunderstanding of their financial reality. They thought he was simple. They were about to learn that simple did not mean stupid. He opened another tab and began the grim work of searching for the email addresses of Said's extended family. Her father, a man named Joseph, who was a partner at the same firm Said worked at, but who had always been civil, if distant, to Eli. Her uncle Marcus, the cardiologist, her aunts, her cousins. He found them through social media profiles, company websites, and old family newsletters saved on their shared drive. He compiled a list of 17 email addresses in a spreadsheet. Then he opened a blank email. He attached the audio file from the Ring camera, a simple .mp3 file. For the subject line, he wrote, "A conversation between Beverly and Said, Saturday at 4:02 p.m. He didn't need to add any commentary. He didn't need to explain his pain or his anger. The recording was the narrator, the prosecutor, and the judge. He stared at the draft, his finger hovering over the mouse. It was a declaration of war. He saved the draft. He would send it tomorrow. Sunday. A day of rest. It felt fitting. He would give them one last peaceful day before their perfectly curated world came crashing down. Finally, he drafted a short, precise email to Ms. Sharma. Subject, retainer and filing, Eli Johnson. Dear Ms. Sharma, I am ready to proceed. The incident we discussed has occurred, and I have irrefutable evidence. Please send over the retainer agreement for the $5,000 we discussed. I will wire the funds tomorrow morning. I would like to file for divorce on Monday morning. The evidence is attached. Please review at your convenience. Regards, Eli." He attached the same audio file and hit send. It was 3:48 a.m. The first step had been taken. There was no going back now. Sunday morning was surreal. Eli woke up at his usual time, the first gray light of dawn breaking over the mountains. He made coffee, the familiar ritual, a small anchor in the churning sea of his emotions. He felt a strange calm, the kind that comes after a storm has passed and you are left to survey the damage. The house was quiet. He went for a run along the Truckee River, the cool morning air a balm on his spirit. He watched the water flowing, relentless and steady, and felt a kinship with it. It just kept moving forward no matter what obstacles were in its path. He ran 5 miles, his body protesting but his mind clearing with every step. He was no longer a victim of circumstances. He was an agent of his own liberation. He returned to the condo at 8 a.m. Sadie was just waking up. "You went for a run?" she asked, stretching in the kitchen, her voice thick with sleep. "Yeah, felt good to get out," he said, grabbing a bottle of water from the fridge. He was polite, distant, a subtle shift in the emotional climate that she seemed to notice. "Is everything okay?" she asked, a small frown creasing her brow. "Everything's fine," he said. "Just tired." They spent the morning in a state of carefully managed truce. He tinkered with the leaky faucet under the kitchen sink, a task he'd been putting off. She read a book on the patio. The silence between them was no longer comfortable. It was heavy with unspoken words. At 1 p.m., he sat down at his laptop in the office. He opened the draft email to her family. He took one last look at the list of 17 names: Joseph, Marcus, Aunt Carol, Cousin David. The people who had smiled at him at holiday gatherings. The people who had listened to Beverly's quiet campaign against him for years and had likely said nothing. They were all complicit in their own way. He took a deep breath and clicked send. The digital missile was launched. He closed the laptop and walked into the living room. He sat on the sofa, picked up a magazine, and waited. It took 23 minutes. Sade was on the patio, talking on the phone, presumably to her mother again. Her laughter drifted in through the open sliding glass door. Then, her phone emitted a sharp ding, a text message, then another and another. A rapid-fire succession of dings. Her laughter stopped. Her voice became a confused murmur. "Hold on, Mom. My phone is blowing up." Eli could hear the muffled sounds of her conversation through the glass. "What?" "No, that's crazy. Who sent you that?" A pause. "My dad? And Uncle Marcus?" Her voice was rising in pitch, a frantic edge creeping in. "An audio file? What are you talking about?" She burst back into the living room, her phone clutched in her hand, her face a mask of disbelief and dawning horror. Her luminous brown skin had gone pale. "Eli," she said, her voice trembling, "my whole family is texting me. Someone sent them an audio recording of me and my mom talking yesterday. They're saying horrible things." Eli looked up from his magazine, his expression perfectly neutral. He held her gaze. He didn't have to say a word. She saw it in his eyes. The calm, the finality. "You?" she whispered, the single word a breath of pure shock. "How could you? Where did you get that?" "The Ring camera in the garage," he said, his voice quiet and even. "It records on motion. I was in there when you were on the phone." The color drained completely from her face. She stared at him, her mouth opening and closing, but no sounds came out. The phone in her hand began to ring, the screen flashing "Dad." She ignored it. "You sent that to my father? To my entire family?" "Yes," he said. "Why?" The question was a wail of despair. "Why would you do that to me?" And that was the moment he knew, with absolute certainty, that he had done the right thing. Her question wasn't, "How could we fix this?" or "I'm so sorry." It was, "Why would you do this to me?" Her only concern was her own humiliation, the public dismantling of her carefully constructed image. There was no remorse for the years of betrayal, only fury at being exposed. "You and your mother have been doing this to me for 8 years, he said, his voice still quiet, but now laced with the cold steel of conviction. He stood up. "The difference is, I did it with the truth." He walked past her, grabbing his keys from the bowl by the door. "I'm going out for a while. I think you have some phone calls to make." He walked out the door, closing it softly behind him, leaving her alone in the wreckage of the life she had so carelessly taken for granted. The consequences cascaded with brutal efficiency. Eli drove to a Starbucks on South Virginia Street, ordered a large black coffee for $3.50, and sat in a corner booth watching the fallout unfold on his phone. He didn't have to wait long. Consequence number 1, the family implosion. The first text came from Said's father, Joseph, but it was addressed to Eli. It arrived at 1:47 p.m. Eli, I have no words. I just listened to the recording. I am ashamed and deeply sorry for what you have endured. I will be speaking with Beverly and Said. Please know that I never shared their view of you. You have always been a good man. I understand if you cannot forgive us, but I am truly sorry. Joseph. Eli felt a flicker of something, not pity, but a sad sort of respect for the man. Joseph was a product of his world, but he still had a moral compass. The messages that followed painted a picture of a family in chaos. A text from Said's cousin, a woman Eli had always liked. Eli, I'm so sorry. I can't believe what I just heard. Aunt Beverly is a monster, thinking of you. Then a furious text from Said's Uncle Marcus, the cardiologist. Said, what the hell is this? You let Mom fill your head with this garbage for years? You married him. I'm calling Dad. The family group chat, which Eli was still a part of, was a digital bloodbath. He watched the messages fly, a silent observer at his own vindication. Consequence number 2, the wrath of Beverly. At 2:15 p.m., his phone rang. It was Beverly. He let it go to voicemail. The message she left was a masterpiece of narcissistic rage. Eli, you pick up this phone right now. How dare you? How dare you try to humiliate me and my daughter? You are a pathetic, vindictive little man. You think this is a victory. You have just destroyed your life. You will get nothing. Do you hear me? Nothing. He saved the voicemail. It was just more evidence. Consequence number 3, the legal strike. At 9:01 a.m. on Monday morning, Eli received an email from Anya Sharma. Subject, filing confirmation. Eli, we have filed the petition for divorce this morning. A process server is en route to your wife's place of employment. He should be there within the hour. The retainer has been processed. I have listened to the audio you sent, as well as the voicemail from your mother-in-law. They are compelling. This will be straightforward. Stay the course. Anya. The total cost of the filing and the server was $850. Deducted from his $5,000 retainer, it was the best money he had ever spent. Consequence number 4, the public humiliation. At 10:30 a.m., Sade called him, her voice a choked sob. A man just came to my office, Eli, in front of everyone. He served me with divorce papers. In front of my boss. How could you? The shame was what hurt her most, not the loss of her husband. The damage to her precious professional image was her primary concern. The law firm, the very place her mother had secured for her, had become the stage for her public downfall. Consequence number 5, the financial reckoning. The divorce papers laid out the cold, hard facts. Eli was petitioning to affirm the condo as his sole and separate property. He was petitioning to affirm his LLC and all its assets as his own. He was offering her half of the joint savings account, a grand total of $250. He was making no claim on her 401k or her personal bank accounts. He was not asking for alimony. He was simply asking for a clean break, taking only what was rightfully his. For Sade and Beverly, who viewed marriage as a vehicle for financial advancement, this was the ultimate insult. There was no payday. There was no golden parachute. There was only the Lexus with its $650 monthly payment, her designer wardrobe, and the stark reality that the comfortable life she'd known, subsidized by his steady, bottom-tier income, was over. She would have to find a new apartment with first and last month's rent, a security deposit, and utility hookup fees that would likely cost her over $4,000 up front, almost the exact amount in their joint savings. The math was simple, and it was brutal. She had listened to her mother's terrible advice for 8 years, and the final bill had just come due. 6 months later, the Reno sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue. The autumn air was crisp, carrying the scent of drying leaves from the cottonwood trees that lined the Truckee River. Eli ran along the path, his feet pounding a steady rhythm on the pavement. The divorce had been finalized 2 months ago. It had been, as Anya Sharma predicted, remarkably straightforward. The audio recording was a silver bullet. Beverly and Sade had made some noise about fighting for a piece of the condo's appreciated value, but their attorney quickly advised them that a lengthy court battle, with the recording as Exhibit A, would only result in more public humiliation and legal fees they couldn't afford. Sade had walked away with her car, her clothes, her 401k, and her half of the savings. She had moved into a $1,800 a month apartment complex near the airport, a significant step down from the life she'd envisioned. Beverly, according to family gossip that still trickled down to him, was persona non grata at most family functions. Her own husband, Joseph, was reportedly sleeping in the guest room of their beige mansion. Eli felt no joy in their downfall, only a quiet, profound sense of peace. He had shed a weight he didn't even realize he'd been carrying for 8 years. His condo felt like his own again. The quiet was no longer tense, it was serene. He had painted the living room a warm gray, sold the Pottery Barn bedroom set, and bought a simple, sturdy wooden frame for $600. He was reclaiming his space and his life. His biggest change, however, was at work. He'd always been a respected technician, but now he channeled his energy into something more. He volunteered to mentor the new apprentices at the casino, young men and women just starting out in the trade. He found a deep satisfaction in teaching them, in passing on the skills his own mentors had given him. He taught them how to read schematics, how to braze a copper line without a leak, how to diagnose a faulty compressor. But he also taught them about the value of their work. Never let anyone tell you that working with your hands makes you less than, he told a young apprentice named Jamal last week, as they stood on the same casino roof where his old life had ended. We keep this entire city running. The lights, the air, the comfort. It all depends on people like us. That is a skill. That is a profession. Be proud of the calluses on your hands. They are a sign of competence. They are a sign of character. He finished his run and stood looking at the river, the sunlight warm on his face. He had learned the hardest lesson of his life, that true wealth has nothing to do with the price tag on your car or the square footage of your house. It's not about a salary figure or a job title. True wealth is self-respect. It's the quiet dignity of a job well done. It's the peace that comes from knowing your own value, even when others try to diminish it. It's the freedom to build a life on a foundation of truth, not on the shifting sands of someone else's approval. He had lost a wife, but he had found himself. And in the quiet solitude of a Sunday morning by the river, he knew with a certainty that settled deep in his bones that he had never been richer. We all face moments where our worth is challenged by others. The most important thing is to never let their definition of you become your own. What do you believe is the true measure of a person's wealth? Share your thoughts with our community in the comments. We read every single one, and your story might be the one someone else needs to hear today.